excited today to give a formal endorsement to my friend Dr. Miller-Meeks. I do have a trivia question for you. We're going to make someone answer this, or I'm going to have to answer myself. How does milking a cow and public health policy intersect? It's a tough question. I'm going to have to answer it. What? No. They discovered in the 18th century that though it was women primarily back then who milked the cows, didn't get smallpox. The reason they didn't get smallpox is most of them got cowpox from the cow, from milking the cows, but there's a crossover. So now the vaccines we don't take anymore used to be smallpox. It was a cowpox vaccine because it was less deadly. But the story of smallpox is an amazing story, and I'll get off politics a little bit here. I think one way we can intersect it with public policy is that the first doctor was Dr. Boylston. This is in the 1720s in Boston. But he wasn't afraid to be a nonconformist. And the people he actually vaccinated first were his kids. And it was pretty risky because it was we've got somebody, this is kind of what they're doing with Ebola, somebody who lives through it, either has a milder form or has immunity to it, that takes some of their pus from the pustules in your arm, and it was a live inoculation. Boy, how am I going to relate that to get that back? There's good news and bad news from Washington. All right, the good news is your government's open. The bad news is your government's open. And we wonder who can fix it. And apparently you've got one guy campaigning here who thinks that we need more lawyers and less farmers. I don't know much about campaigning in Iowa, but I do know Chuck Grassley, and I think it's probably not good advice to criticize Chuck Grassley or farmers. As a physician, I think we need a few more physicians and maybe a few less lawyers. Goes with this certain prejudice that somehow you have to be a lawyer to have wisdom. Chuck Grassley has a lot of wisdom, and I would really trust him to be head of the judiciary, lawyer or not. And so I would think that if everybody in Iowa eventually knew that, which I think most people in Iowa are beginning to know this, that no matter what walk of life you would, you'd be saying, you know what, do we really want a guy that says lawyer, or that says farmers basically aren't wise enough to be able to make decisions to run a committee? So I hope that that becomes known far and wide. I hope you also send us Joni Ernst. The president maintains that he won't negotiate with a gun to his head. So all these deadlines come up, he says he's not negotiating. Well, in 2011, he actually did negotiate. There was going to be an increase in the debt ceiling, and he finally negotiated, and he allowed something called the sequester. The sequester wasn't really a cut in spending, it was a cut in the rate of growth of spending. You have to realize that this is Washington we're talking about, so nothing makes sense. You would think a baseline would be flat. The baseline of spending, which is the law in Washington, is on an incline. Spending goes up about 5% a year, no matter what. That's the law, unless we change it. So the sequester made it 5 minus about 1. You can't almost see the difference between the lines, but it was slowing down the rate of growth of government. The government was still growing in every department. But here's the sad thing. Both Republicans and Democrats got together and we got rid of the sequester. So there is no more sequester. They have a 10-year spending plan and they say, well, we're going to increase spending by $60 billion in the first 2 years. We'll make up for it, let's say, in years 11 and 12 of the 10-year spending plan. I'm not kidding you. Everything in Washington is that way. They're trying to come up with money for the highway fund, and it has to be so-called paid for. They pay for it like in year 9 and 10. They spend it in year 1 and 2, and they pay for it in 9 and 10. By the time year 3 and 4 comes by, they say, oh, whoops, we're changing, and you've got a new spending plan. Nothing really has a sense of truth other than the first year or 2 of spending. So we should be honest with people and just say, you know what, we can't spend money we don't have. You can't do it in your family budget. Why should we let government do it? And it's not just a number. You look at that number, 17 trillion, or now 17.5 trillion. You look at the debtclock.org and just see the numbers spiraling out of control, and you say, well, gosh, what does that mean? What does that mean to me? Are they just numbers? I can't even conceive of how big $1 trillion is. In fact, Reagan used to try to do a demonstration. He said, if I put $1,000 bills in my hand, 4 inches high, it'd be $1 million. But if I want to put $1 trillion in my hand and $1,000 bills, it'd be 63 miles high. So these numbers are mind-boggling, but they do have real ramifications. If you've got a kid or a grandchild that's graduated from college and they owe $100,000 and they don't have a job, guess what? That's what the deficit does. It drags down growth. Some economists say it's causing us 1 million jobs a year. Last quarter, we didn't grow at all. We had negative growth last quarter. The president said he's probably still blaming it on George Bush, I'm sure. He's been in office 6 years and it's still George Bush's fault. But the thing is, in Kentucky, we still have fewer jobs now than we had in 2008. In fact, we have a president who comes to our state and coal's a big deal for us in Kentucky. We've lost 7,000 jobs just in the coal industry. And he promised he would bankrupt coal, and of course that's what's going on. But when we look at the budget, we say, well, what can we do to fix it? Certainly, couldn't we cut some spending? 2/3 of your budget is entitlements. Nobody ever touches it at all. It's Social Security, Medicare, and Medicaid. 2/3 of your budget. In fact, when we had the shutdown, your government really didn't shut down. 2/3 of your government's on autopilot, and it just goes on and on. And as much as I believe those programs should be preserved, they can't spend more than comes in or you'll destroy the programs. They have to get fixed. So you have entitlements that never shut down. 2/3 of your government never shut down. The remaining third is half military and half stuff. That's what I call everything else. And so immediately we said, well, we should pay our soldiers. We shouldn't shut the government down and not pay our soldiers. You can't do that. We have to pay for their equipment, their defense, and their armaments and everything. So we opened up the Defense Department. So now we're down to a half of a third. We're down to a sixth of government. It was closed for a little while. And the president was worried you might not notice. He thought, well, gosh, a sixth of the government, they might not notice. So he wrapped the World War II monument. Remember that?
Yes.
Anybody ever seen the World War II monument? There is no entrance and exit. There's nobody working there. I think it was paid for with private donations. I'm sure they cut the grass every couple of weeks or so. But there is no real cost to it. What cost was he possibly saving other than to try to demonstrate to you that there were ramifications for trying to make him negotiate? But if you want to be left with an image of the shutdown, here's the image you should be left with. The World War II veterans showed up with their wire cutters, they cut the barricades, they threw them on their bus, and then they threw them on the White House lawn. During the shutdown, though, there was one interesting thing that they did. They sent notices to all of our offices, and they said, list your essential and your unessential employees. And I thought, wow, this could be a great lesson. We could learn about how we could trim the fat, trim the things that are unessential. And so I asked my staff, what did the IRS do? 90% unessential. It's like, man, there's a lesson to be learned here. How about the EPA? 95% unessential. It's like, wow, this is a great lesson. Somebody's going to learn about how we can cut government with all these unessential employees. And then I learned that, you know what, these bureaucrats, they never miss a beat. They thought the fix was in. Turns out that if you're declared unessential, you don't have to show up during a shutdown, but you do get paid. It costs us more money to shut the government down than to keep it open. You know your government's dysfunctional if it costs more to shut it down than to keep it open. Because we paid all these people. We call them non-essential, but we paid them all. But during the shutdown, they did go, somebody did something extraordinary, and they went to the EPA, and they started looking at employees over there. They found one woman who hadn't been to work in 20 years. And she supposedly was working from home, but there had been no work product from home for 5 years. They found another woman who was had found 17 jobs for her family and friends, paid internships. She also sold jewelry and vitamins from her government computer and from her cubicle. And you think, well, good, they found it, they fired her, right? Are you kidding me? Fire a federal employee? No way, she still works there. They found another man who'd been downloading porn 6 hours a day on his government computer. Certainly they fired him for cause. He still works there. If they get rid of him, if he's eligible for a pension, he'll be like Lois Lerner. He'll get a pension. You remember the VA employees? They're creating fake wait lists of people are dying. They're saying, oh, we have this really short wait list. But in reality, it's long enough that people are dying on the wait list. Can we fire them? No, we have no power to fire them. That's the definition of a dysfunctional government. John Stossel did this special on this a couple years ago on teachers who had inappropriate behavior with children. I won't go into the details. You can imagine what I'm talking about. They wouldn't let them in the classroom, but they couldn't fire them. They had a special building, a house in New York City, 400 teachers that were so inappropriate you couldn't, they were dangerous to be around children, but you couldn't fire them. Because the contract was 14 pages long and, and you're unable to fire them. But the guy that really got my attention that they found at the EPA was a guy who hadn't been working for 6 weeks, and he kept getting all these great performance reviews, made over $150,000 a year. He was the right-hand man to Gina McCarthy at the top. And they said, well, they did something extraordinary. They interviewed his boss. They said, why doesn't he come to work? He said, well, he also works for the CIA. I'm like, really? The EPA and the CIA at the same time? It's an interesting combo. So they did something really extraordinary. They called the CIA. And they said, Jonathan who? His name was Jonathan Beeler. He never had worked for the CIA, but for years he'd just not been showing up. So I'm imagining Jonathan Beale, he's got to have a pool. That's just the way I imagine it. He's got a pool, he's sitting by his pool, and he's drinking a beer. His boss calls and said, Jonathan, aren't you coming in? No, I'm on secret assignment. It's not open. The president doesn't think we can cut in. He doesn't want to negotiate over any cuts, and this is the kind of examples you have throughout government. But I get frustrated because you really have to do some of the difficult things. You have to look at entitlements. I'm not for getting rid of Social Security or getting rid of Social Security, Medicare. I'm for saying, how do you save them? Social Security is $6 trillion short. Medicare is $35 trillion short. The way you save them is you have to have some tough love. My generation is going to have to wait. Those of you who are on Social Security, Medicare, nothing will change. My generation will have to wait a little longer to get it. It's the only way you fix it. You can fix 2/3 of the Social Security problem by raising the age of 2 months a year for about 30 years. Reagan did it back in 1983. We went from 65 to 67. Nobody's jumping up and down saying it's fun, but we're living longer. When Social Security was created, it was 65 average life expectancy. Now it's 80. When Social Security was created, it was 16 workers to 1 retiree. Now it's 3 workers to 1 retiree. Doctors in the room complain about if they're not paying enough, no one's going to go into medicine. Yeah, it's a global problem, though. It's not a specific problem. It's not, let's just pay you more, which I would. But you have to say, why isn't there enough money? It's because the population demographics changed. People say, well, whose fault is it? Republicans' fault? Democrats' fault? No, it's your grandparents' fault for having too many damn kids. We're not going to change that. Demographics shifted. We have to adjust the programs to be able to make them stable and maintain them. But here's the frustration in Washington. We had a vote about 4 or 5 months ago in the House, and there was a squirrel by the name of Twiggy, the water skiing squirrel. This squirrel can water ski. It's pretty amazing. And I like dumb pet tricks, and if you send me an email with a dumb pet trick, I'll watch it. But I'm not willing to spend $3 million for it. This squirrel promotes the selling of American walnuts in Spain. If you've got a walnut farm, God love you. You sell your own walnuts. I'm not selling them. What business is that of the taxpayer to be doing this? So, but we had a vote to get rid of $3 million. And over half the Republicans voted no on this. All the Democrats voted no on this. In fact, they want to give more money to Twiggy the squirrel. But the disappointing thing is even the Republicans couldn't vote no on $3 million. Some of them said, well, it's not enough to balance the budget. You got to start somewhere, all right? But here's the thing is, if you can't vote to cut something frivolous, if you can't vote to cut the $500,000 we spent developing a menu for Mars, if you can't cut frivolous stuff, how are you ever going to take the difficult decisions to address Social Security and Medicare and Medicaid? How are you ever going to fix the system? The system is just spiraling out of control, and nobody's willing to take the tough stands. I think Dr. Miller-Meeks will. I think others will. But you've got to elect people who are not so concerned about their job, or that this will be the best job they ever had. You need people who aren't career politicians, frankly. People say, I never run for anything. I say, that's my best asset. They try to make it out to be something terrible that you haven't been in office before. The problem is people have been in office 30 years, sometimes, not always, but sometimes get beaten down by the system and they don't have the energy or the chutzpah to say, enough's enough, we got to fix it. And I have noticed Dr. Miller-Meeks has some energy. So, but just the people in this room can't do it. This is a great turnout during the week. This is wonderful that you're supporting Dr. Miller-Meeks. But there aren't enough of us. There have to be other people to bring to your party that either don't look like us or are not physicians, who don't own businesses. We need a bigger party. And I don't have to remind you who won in Iowa for the presidency last time and the time before. I'm not casting any blame on any individual, but Iowa didn't do their part. Y'all gave us the president who's messing up the country. And so we need more, we need a bigger, broader coalition. So the party's been debating, how do we get bigger? Some of our parties say, well, let's just dilute what we stand for. If we can just be more moderate and more like the Democrats, we'll get more people to vote for us. I couldn't disagree more. I think we are and should maintain what we believe in. In fact, I think we should be bigger, better, and bolder on all the things we believe in. Balanced budgets, not revenue neutral, but lower taxes, less regulation, leaving more money in Iowa and send less money to Washington. Let's be for all of that. But you know what? If you want to reach out to new people, you want to reach out to the students that go to the university who's tended to vote for the president, 3-to-1 students across America voted for the president. But you know one of the reasons why? They thought he would protect their privacy. He thought if we voted for President Obama, your cell phone would be private. Guess what? Not so much. But we need to be not only the party of the Second Amendment, we need to be the party of the Bill of Rights. You know, we need to defend the Fourth Amendment. If we do, maybe some of those kids come back to support us. With regard to other ways we reach out to people, what about having a foreign policy that is a constitutional foreign policy, that believes that defending the country is the primary function of the federal government, that believes that we should have a strong military, that believes that, as Reagan did, that peace through strength actually deters war, that it doesn't encourage war, it actually deters war, but that nobody ever would have messed with us under Reagan. He let all of our potential enemies know we weren't going to be trifled with. But he also wasn't eager to get involved in war. One of Reagan's first inaugural addresses, you know what he said? He said to potential adversaries, he said, don't mistake our reluctance for war for a lack of resolve. That's the real definition of strength. That's the real definition of a strong leader. When I was coming out of a meeting in Kentucky a couple days ago, a young soldier came out, and they have to be kind of discreet. You know, they can't wear their uniforms to rallies. They're not supposed to campaign, and I understand those rules. But he said, don't give up on this. He said, the soldiers are with you. Soldiers aren't eager for war. So you read these pundits, some of them from our party, who are jumping up and down, and if they were in charge, we'd be involved in 15 wars now. You go talk to your soldiers, some of whom are your kids and your grandkids, and you ask them after their 5th tour in Afghanistan, do you want to go back into the Middle East? Do you want to go back into Iraq? They'll tell you to a person, no. They'll tell you that they want to fight to defend our Bill of Rights, to defend our country, but they're not eager to be involved in another war. They're not eager to be involved in a war where the people running are unwilling to fight for Mosul. We're going to fight for a city that they're unwilling to fight for. There have to be questions before we go to war. And that's why our founding fathers, James Madison, said the executive is the branch most prone to war. That's why we gave the power to the legislative branch. Congress is supposed to vote on war. It's a mess in Libya. When we went to war in Libya, make no mistake, it's a war. When you bomb, it's a war. When Pearl Harbor was bombed by the Japanese, did they violate and commit war against us? Heck yeah, that was war. So we went to war in Libya. Libya, by any objective standard, is worse now than it was before. There are jihadist groups running amok in Libya. There's 24 jihadist groups. Some of them are fighting in Syria. Some of them are fighting in Iraq. But they've now got a place to organize, and it's Libya after the bombing. Our embassy just finally fled. Hillary Clinton made a host of errors being there and not protecting our embassy, and I think precludes herself from ever being commander-in-chief because of it. Hillary's war in Libya, or Hillary's war in Syria, unilaterally. And in doing so, the unintended consequences are there are more jihadists running amok in Libya. Our embassy's now gone from Libya. And there are 15,000 man-pads missing. Man-pads are these shoulder-launched missiles. They're very dangerous to both Israel and to us. And 15,000 of them were missing. In Syria, we didn't get involved with troops. But once again, we've been giving arms to Syrian rebels. Who are these Syrian rebels? We say we're only giving them to the moderates. Well, some of them would attack Israel and will attack Israel and have said they will attack Israel. One group that we gave tow missiles that can attack tanks, anti-tank missiles, they've already said when they're done with Assad, they'll attack, take the Golan Heights back from Israel. I warned them of this. I said, if you sell weapons to Syria, to these rebels, that these will either be used against us someday or Israel. Now it's already coming true. We created a safe haven for this group they call ISIS. Well, ISIS now, everybody's saying is this horrible threat. Maybe they are, but how did they get organized? We created a safe space for them in Syria. Now they're up in Iraq. Do you know who's bombing ISIS? Do you know the #1 military threat to ISIS is? Assad. He's a terrible guy. He gassed his people, but he actually is a great enemy of this radical group now. It is such a topsy-turvy mess. There's 1 million Christians in Syria. They've been there since the time of Christ. You know who they live with? They live on the side of Assad. They don't love him, but he actually protects them from the radical jihadists that are fighting on the other side of the war. I don't know who to support in a war like that. You don't know who to support. When it's not a clear-cut American interest, maybe we should stay out of it. If we want to win, though, we got to be a bigger, better, bolder party. It means bringing young people into our party, bringing minorities into our party, bringing people who haven't been open to our message. When we do, when we're a bigger, better, bolder party, we're going to win. I hope this year you'll carry Dr. Miller-Meeks to victory. Thank you very much.